Lyra Heartstrings, Zephyr Breeze, A True Love by Switch W. Shortly after Zephyr had taken his graduation from main-style school, he actually still lived with his parents only for about a short time until he found his own place. But during the time he was very happy. Shortly after he got his first work, well, at least a practice type of work, in Cloudfield, he met the most beautiful mare which he ever to expect. Both of them was very happy together, and for the past few months everything seems to be working just perfectly. Sophie's sister, Fluttershy, and his parents were so excited to meet his first girlfriend, and she was so unbelievably kind, sweet, honest, and they all of them liked her. And they didn't have any problems in their relationship, no fights. Well, it's more small arguments, but nothing serious. And they had actually even moved in together within only about 3 months being together as a couple. Everything seems to be working quite well for them. His girlfriend was working in a local store in Cloudesdale, and Sophia was working on this main stylist as a practice work until he might be get as a permanent work there. But then one day all changed. Sophia came home from work to find a note on the table in the kitchen. It was a note from his girlfriend. It turns out she left him. She left him for another stallion. She had fallen in love with a more stronger and more richer pony in Manhattan after that she had been given opportunity to start her own business there. Zephyr didn't first believe what he read, so he read the note several times, but still didn't even believe it. He was devastated. He actually had been told by the owner of the main stylist that he might be permanent worker there within the end of the week. But Zephyr Breeze, he was so devastated. He actually stopped going to work. He barely eat, he barely sleep, and one day the landlord of the apartment building told him if he doesn't pay the rent with the end of the week, he is out the apartment. And Sophia told him, go ahead. And he walked back to his apartment, packed a bag, and just gave the landlord the key and said, you can keep it. I don't want to live here anymore. He decided to leave and went back home to his parents. But this time they were standing against him to stay there too long. But they only let him to stay there for a few days. But they encouraged him to go back to the landlord and ask him back his apartment. But Zephyr didn't want to stay there because they only bring up old bad memories. Well, at least the old memories of his past relationship. And it hurt him so much. So he didn't want to be there any longer. He couldn't even stand the old memories with her. So then they encouraged him maybe that he could stay with his sister until he was back on his hoops again. But they also know that Even if that they had asked Fluttershy about it, she probably would be first against the entire idea, because she was the one who tried to make him to get him to work. But they talked to Fluttershy when she came there for a visit, and she saw that Zephyr was back home, so she asked if he was for a visit, but then they told her the whole truth. She was so shocked. She couldn't even believe that his past ex-girlfriend could just be like that. And then when they asked her if that her brother could stay with her for a couple of days until he get back to his hoops again. But Fluttershy knows what they mean couple of days, it can mean weeks, months until he's back. But like of that, she agrees. Even if that it means for months of staying there, Sophia was happy that at least that he had to stay with his sister. But the first few days, he refused to even leave the bed. But with help from Fluttershy's animal friends, they managed to push him out of bed and forced him to help her at the college with like cooking dinner, helping with the animals, anything that he could do without being in bed all day. She told him that he had no longer to feel sorry for him because he didn't do anything wrong. He was truthful, he was faithful, honest to her, and even though he couldn't see the sign that she wanted to leave him. And she told him if he wanted to stay there any longer, he had to be at least find some type of work that so that he could provide her with some sort of rent. At least it doesn't have to be much. At first idea was very much a shock to him that he had to pay her rent for staying with her own sister. But she told him only for about 5 bits for each month would be much as he can pay for. And that was the lowest price he ever heard, but he agrees. So he went to town in Ponyville to find any suitable work. First he tried in a suitable cafe, nothing worked. In the local stores, nothing worked. In a local bakery or even at the sugar cube corner, not working. At the local library, not working. The only place that he knew for sure that could work was the Ponyville spa. He asked if he can have any opportunity to start working there, even for as like practice, just showing that he can stay there. And they were only allowing him to stay there as a part-time job, which was the best thing they can do. So the rest of the day he looked for another type of work that he can stay at. And then luckily a new main saloon had opened in Ponyville. And they only had 2 main stylists. And they were looking for maybe 1 or 2 more. So he applied for this work, and before that he was accepted, he had to proving himself what he could, what style he was known to, familiar with, and he passed all the tests. And he was hired right away. And soon all this new design of his main stylist spread as a rumor in town. Soon all the mares, stallions across the town wanted to be there for his new designs. And for the first time in months, Zephyr seems to be happy again, even though that he missed his ex-girlfriend. But one day it changed when the mare known as Lyra Heartstrings walked into the saloon and asked for a new main stylist, and the owner had given Zephyr her the opportunity to show her, since he had been doing some new his own main stylist designs. And after he had helped Lyra with the new design, she was impressed. She had no idea how so well that Zephyr was making main style. For some reason, she actually asked him out. And at first he neither wanted to say yes or no, but some of the ponies in the saloon saw him looking at her, that when she asked him, and the owner said, "Go for it." She knows a little bit what happened to Zephyr over the past few months, and he said yes. They was going out to the restaurant the next day. So Sophie told his sister about this, and she was excited and even a bit surprised hearing that Zephyr has actually found a new date. Even she was a little bit worried about how this might work out. At first, even Zephyr was a little bit nervous about this. This was his first date in a few months. Even though that he didn't hope that maybe this date would go well, and maybe that's in just one date couldn't hurt. So the next day was actually his day off from work. Both works. So he met up with Lyra at the restaurant, and they seemed to be having a great time. That she laughed at his jokes, listened to his stories about his life in Clydesdale, and she asked him about his rumors or even talking about his past relationship, how if there was even some real truth of it, and he confirmed all of it was actually true. But after they left the restaurant, they walked around in town just to spend some more time. Then, of all the ponies in town, they encountered Zephyr Breeze's ex-girlfriend, who just arrived to town, and she saw him and actually walked up to Zephyr and asked him for forgiveness. She realized how much of a fool she were, just leaving him for another stallion. It turns out this stallion wasn't rich, but he didn't love her at all. He only loved himself mostly, and was dating other male mares as besides her. She found out that he was like cheating on her, and also realized that Zephyr has never been anything like that to her. So she asked him if she wants to take him back and move back to Maidhaven with him. But he said no right away, because he said to her that he has a new girlfriend, which is Lyra, and kissed her and just walked away. His ex-girlfriend was just standing there and didn't say a word except, why? Why me? For her. And that was the only thing he said, and that was the last time Zephyr ever saw her. The last time he heard, she actually moved back to Trottingham, where she was originally from. Lyra was very happy to hearing that he was decided to be with her, of all other ponies, because his ex-girlfriend was more beautiful than her, but he decided to be with her and stay in Ponyville for the rest of his life. He had friends, and had his sister there, and Lyra. And for the past few weeks after this event, Lyra has actually been starting to be more in love with Zephyr. But after that, Father Shia had heard that Zephyr's ex-girlfriend had been arrived in Ponyville. She thought that he was going to take her back and leave Lyra. But when she heard Lyra was still with Zephyr and that Zephyr said no to his ex-girlfriend, she was surprised, and that was much different from what he usually been. But she was happy that he's staying with Lyra and seems to care about her, and he really did. And for the past few weeks after that particular event, he spent a lot of time with Lyra, taking her out to movies, picnics, restaurants, and even just taking walks into the park or just spending a lot of time together. They even celebrate Heartwarming Eve together with Lyra's family. And that was something that Sophia actually looked forward to. Even Lyra's family. They were a bit skeptical about her relationship with Zephyr, if this one even lasted any particular longer, because Lyra never had any particular long relationship much before. The last one she had lasted for maybe like almost 5 months. That was as long as she had. But Lyra with Zephyr seems to be solid, true feelings. They never had any fights at all. This seems to be working well between them. It was like they're made for each other. But there were only one fight they had. And that was when they decided to move in. Since Zephyr had his own apartment now in Ponyville, and Lyra was still living with her friend, Stray Drops, they talked about if Lyra should move in with Zephyr or if Zephyr should move in with her and her friend. But even Sweet Drops was the first not against the idea, letting another pony move in with them. But they turned out she was right, and even though that they had another room for Zephyr, it would only make it a little bit harder for them. Even the rent would be probably even more higher, and since Sweet Drops, even she has her work, and Lyra has hers, and Zephyr, they would be a lot of much higher in price. So Zephyr had agreed with Sweet Drops maybe that Lyra could move in with him, since he had an apartment big enough for both of them together, but Lyra can still sleep over at Sweet Drop's apartment or house as often as she could when she needed some time off from Zephyr, which Sweet Drops had no problem with. But then the day came when Sweet Drops was told by Zephyr that he was going to propose to her, to Lyra, and she was like, "Oh, that's so sweet of you, Zephyr," and he actually did it in the park, and it was just the most adorable moment. Lyra didn't need any moment to think for an answer, and she said yes. And just barely, only a couple of weeks later, Lyra and Sweet Drops was planning for their wedding, and Zephyr, he was excited to be married with his true love. And this wedding was actually held in Canterlot, since there was going to be such many guests, and the only place they had for another place for the wedding was actually Sweet Apple Acres, but the Apple family was having their family reunion, which would be an available place for the wedding. And Lyra had asked Zephyr if he was going to invite his ex-girlfriend, but he said no. She is out of my life and never been to be talked to ever again. And she was right. She had never seen or heard anything after her since she moved back to Toronto. And the wedding was perfect. Sweet Drops as Lyra's bridesmaid, and all the other ponies in Ponyville. Spike had been asked to be Zephyr's best man, and they later actually celebrate their honeymoon in a tropical island resort for next 3 whole weeks. And only about maybe 4 years after the wedding, Zephyr and Lyra had been talking about starting a family, but they didn't exactly know how many children they want to have. Lyra said 4, Zephyr said 5 or 6, but they decided to have as many as they wanted. So the first they had triplets, $3, and they had it, and only about 2 years later they had a son. But then it happened again. 4 years later they had triplets, daughters. But then suddenly after the triplets was born again, they had a second son. And that's how Lyra and Zephyr Breeze, Financial Love, got a big family. The end.